It's on point 2 p.m. That is very German, but it's great to see you all here. And what we want to discuss today here is how can the dairy industry in Europe be part of the solution regarding the climate crisis. And fact is, the dairy industry is already on the way to a more sustainable food system, and the goals are very clear. We have to get climate-neutral farms in the future, we have to reduce emissions, and we have to implement circularity for sure. And I'm really looking forward to our fantastic panel later on. They are sitting here in the front row. But first of all, I like to welcome Laurent Damian. He is the chair of the European Milk Forum, and you have a microphone over there, and you take sustainability in the dairy sector seriously, and as a host, now you have some welcome words for our audience. Great to have you here, and maybe an applause for you.
Thank you very much. So I am Laurent Damiens, so the chair of EMF, the European Milk Forum. It's a grouping of 10 European countries. We decided to work together 12 years ago on different subjects, and for the last years on sustainability, because it's a main issue in the dairy sector. After the Paris Agreement, we decided globally with the Rotterdam Agreement to go on sustainability. This was already 8 years ago, and days after days, year after years, all our farmers, all our companies in the world, but mainly in Europe, are making a lot of efforts on sustainability. So it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm very happy to have you here today. We are going to have a very nice panel discussion to show that we are moving in Europe, because it's a big issue, and we want to take this issue and our responsibility. So thank you for being here. I'm sure we're going to have a very nice panel discussion, and thank you for the panelists. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And you will join our panel discussion, and I would like to invite our panelists on stage right now. Come up here to your positions, and I will introduce all of you. And we really have fantastic guests today. 2 scientists, one of them is a farmer as well, and one farmer. And let's start with her. The woman in the middle, her name is Elisa Münster. She's a dairy farmer in Germany and working for QM Milk, or Milch in German, an association that takes care along the value chain of the dairy industry. And she will give us a lot of insights on what sustainability means for the day-to-day business on a farm. So warm welcome to you, and an applause for her.
Hi.
Then our next farmer and scientist is Professor John Gilliland. He is a professor in agriculture and sustainability, worked for the Queen's University in Belfast, and he is an advisor for policies for this topic. And during our get-to-know meeting last week, he promised that it's not that easy to keep him in time, but I swear I will do my very best today. So great to have you here, John, and an applause for you as well. And last but not least, warm welcome to you, Dr. Federico Dragoni from the Leibniz Institute for Agricultural Engineering and Bioeconomy. And he will explain what circularity means in the dairy industry and what the Dairy Mix project is. That's very interesting. And an applause for you as well. Great to have you here. And we lost Dr. Jan Grenz for today because of the strike at the Deutsche Bahn. He is based in Switzerland, and so he could not make it today, so greetings from here to Switzerland. And only as information for you as our audience, we committed to use our first names on this panel, only to let you know. And now we will have short John. Short lectures, around 5 minutes from each of our panelists, and afterwards we will combine all the different topics in our panel discussion. So, first lecture will come from you, John. Let's get started.
Thank you very much, Jeannie. I have to say, I don't know where you got this idea that I was long-winded as a typical Irishman. Thank you very much to the European Milk Forum for asking me to come along. I'm going to speak very shortly about the experience that I and a collection of farmers in Ireland are on, a journey here. And our challenge around here is very simple. If you can't measure, you can't manage. And if we really want our journey of change to be recognized, it has to be a journey of integrity. And to do and deliver integrity, you can only do that if you measure and manage. Now, when we went on our journey in Ireland, the very first thing we started was actually define the goal, and the goal for us was net zero. And most time when people talk about net zero, they go straight to emissions. But actually, net zero is about bringing emissions down, but it's also about building carbon stocks up. It's also about using renewables. It's also about using waste management, renewable transport fuel. When all of that within your business comes to zero, that is net zero. Remember, gross zero, which is what most people talk about, means no animals and no humans. So for us, where did we start? Well, we wanted to know our numbers. We as farmers really struggled. We knew we had emissions, but we didn't know exactly where they came from and how much. We knew we had carbon stocks in the soils and trees, but we didn't know how much. So we wanted to know our numbers, because only when you have knowledge can you make informed decisions. To do that, we really wanted to measure, and measure with a granularity that if we changed our behavioral change would be caught. So just to give you an idea, we used 2 key planks for measuring carbon stocks. We used an airplane using aerial technology called LiDAR, where we scanned our landscape at 16 scans per square meter compared to a satellite at 1 scan per 10 square meters. So if I planted a tree or I cut a tree out, it would be picked up, okay? The second thing is that we wanted to sample our soil, not to 15 centimeters, not to 30 centimeters, but to the bedrock or to 1 meter deep. That allows us, as we go on our journey from switching in Ireland from a monoculture of perennial ryegrass with a lot of synthetic nitrogen, and we start to use legumes and herbs, they have deeper roots. And the benefit about this technology, if you repeat it every 5 years, you will see my change going from a monoculture of ryegrass to putting herbs and legumes in because of their root structure. So once we got to know our numbers, we all went to the toolbox. And there's a big toolbox out there. But the thing about the toolbox is there are many tools in there that are not right for my farm, but they might be right for your farm. And so how do you know how to pick the right tool? Is you need to be informed with your own numbers right at the start. And the second thing you need to be informed on is the economics. Because at the end of the day, at the moment, there are some of the tools that you can use will actually make you more money. There's some of the tools that you will use that will cost you money. So, improving animal genetics and animal health will make you money. Using emission inhibitors, using green nitrogen fertilizer will cost you money. And until someone pays us for actually going on this journey, I can only recommend, as a farmer and to my other farmers, we do the things that make us money until someone wakes up that if you want us to do the expensive things, someone's going to pay. Now, one of the key things in the journey we were on is we looked at the total system. We did not just look at net zero. We looked at biodiversity. We have a biodiversity crisis. We looked at water quality. In Ireland, we have a water quality crisis. So we looked at what we could do together. And the 2 images you see on this screen, the one on the left-hand side is what we call a runoff risk map. So where does the surplus rain in a storm run off our land and discharge into a river? And if you know that, you can start to do interventions to make sure none of your nutrient or soil or manures end up in the water quality. So when we started to do this, This particular two images comes from one of my two dairy farms, Hugh Harbison. And what Hugh did is, hold on, John, I have a very big footprint on nitrous oxide because of all my fertilizer. If I switch to multi-species swards, they have really big, long roots. If I plant them in my roots overland flow, so I make one change, I reduce my nitrous oxide emissions. I improve water infiltration. I put more carbon into my soil. I improve water quality, and I increase biodiversity in my soil. One change delivering 5 public goods. Now, that is complex. And for many people, oh, that's too difficult. But I will argue complexity is good. Complexity delivers you the best wins, and most importantly, profitable milk production. Key for us is getting behavioral change. And to get the right behavioral change, you need knowledge. This journey is about talking with farmers, not talking at farmers. Too often, we talk down at farmers. Farmers are humans like everybody else. If you talk with them, you win their hearts and minds. You talk at them, and you make them bad-tempered. So the key for us is how do we move this out to the labs and the research farms, and the tool is through living labs and lighthouse farms. And that is where you're multiplying up the new knowledge at scale on commercial farms, and where you invite your neighboring farmers in and you do peer-to-peer learning. Far better. And certainly for us, that has been the core. So out of that, you get a very positive communication. You inspire other farmers as well as yourself. I can do this. I now understand this. I know where my low-hanging fruit is. I know my problems. I now have knowledge. And that is absolutely core. So overall, the last message I want to leave is we're all aware last December, COP took place in Dubai. And for anyone who followed it, for me, there was a lot of bad news because fossil fuels got let off the hook again. And we have to carry the main burden of it. But on the fringe of that, the FAO, the United Nations Food, Agriculture and Organization Society, or agency, published a really important vision to 2050 about how do we deliver SDG 2, which is zero hunger for humans and 1.5 degrees of temperature rise. This is an extraordinary document because it ties human health, food and nutrition, and farming together at the hip. And really interesting, it really does articulate the role for animal-sourced foods in delivering zero hunger. And for the first time, the United Nations are saying that livestock and dairy is not a sunset industry. What they are asking is each year until 2050, we increase our productivity, not output, productivity, by 1.8% per year. I know for me as a farmer and my fellow farmers, I'm up for that. Because you know, the one thing we do is we produce highly nutritious milk, which delivers many, many human public goods, particularly driving zero hunger.
Thank you so much, John. And I will take this and give it over to Federico. We will go deeper in a few of the points you mentioned, John, and now we listen to the lecture of Federico.
Thank you. First of all, I'm the only one of the speakers with the privilege of having the remote control for a reason, because I have a very simple and sketchy animation to show. You can see, let's say, a sketchy representation of a dairy farm here. Very specialized, sort of simple, mostly relying on one crop. But if there is one thing I learned in these years in Germany, working at the Leibniz Institute, is that dairy farms are highly diverse. So it's not the only existing model. There could be other crops, and it is quite often the case. Forage crops, other cereals, industrial crops. Of course, when the market conditions are met, because farmers have to live out of the farming activity. It's an economic activity. this to say that, let's say, the diversity of the cropping system is a great tool to help achieving sustainability. Because in the diversification of the cropping system, we have the roots for a circularity strategy. Why? Because by means of a diversified cropping system, the surpluses you unfortunately have very often in a very specialized system can be sort of redistributed among different crops. And let's say in a more even way that is less environmentally dangerous. Let's put it like this. So the negative externalities, the negative impacts are minimized, are shared in an overall more sustainable system. But you can see this at farm scale. You can also see this at a broader scale. And this is probably one of the keys of the solutions. Not to focus only on the single farm, but to see the farm as potentially connected with other farms, so that the streams are connected. There could be, for instance, byproducts going from one farm to another to feed the animals, or manure exported from one farm to other farms that grow other crops, and they would do it by means of an organic fertilizer, no chemical fertilizers. This is something that we are actively investigating, and it's not only entirely theory. What is really challenging is understanding what is the right scale to achieve circularity. The farm scale is probably not saying enough, because farms need to be interconnected with the world, with the market. The connection between farms, but also the connection with the society. Let's think, for instance, of the waste streams. They could offer solutions. The territorial bonds at landscape, at territory level, could offer solutions. So my presentation is coming to the end. This is, in the end, to say that we see in circularity a strategy to achieve sustainability, not a synonym. It's a strategy to achieve sustainability, but sustainability remains the goal, and sustainability itself is something we have to define, because there is the environmental sustainability, but there are also other dimensions of sustainability to be kept into account. And even the environmental sustainability itself, it's not only greenhouse gases. There is nitrogen leaching, there is biodiversity, as he rightly mentioned, and aspects. So the interplay of the many factors is complex. Farms are diverse, digital technologies, and for instance, he said something very right, not simply telling the farmers what to do, but giving the farmers the tools to do it right, probably holds lots of promise and potential to achieve such strategies.
Thank you so much, Federico. I give this back to Sasha, and I hand over to you, Elisa, as here for the next generation of the farmers. We listen to you now and your lecture.
Yeah, test, hello?
Yeah.
Okay. First of all, do you guys have a problem with me taking away the seat? Because I'm like...
Yeah, do that,
I
no
can't
problem.
sit the whole day. So, thanks you guys. I brought a slide with kind of less information than the others, because I have like 2 or 3 great points I want to talk here about. I'm here not just, but what means just? I'm here as an expert for animal welfare and sustainability at QMilk EV in the project Dairy Sustainability Tool, which is the logo over there on the right, you know? But I'm coming to that later, because in the first place I want to talk to you as me being a dairy farmer, and what does it mean to be a dairy farmer, and what do I want from you standing here talking to you as a dairy farmer. So what is a life on a dairy farm like? It's, yeah, I know, like romantic, living with animals and stuff and having nature and stuff, but it's anyways really challenging, you know, because I'm like, there are days I'm working very much late. There's New Year's Eve where I'm like working very late. There are nights where I'm standing up several times because in the end, I have responsibilities for nature and for living animals, and that is really challenging. And responsibilities as like kind of a self-employed person for a whole farm, which has like so many different aspects, and it's that complex. It is quite a, being a farmer is not just a job, it's a passion. And it's that complex that this is my first key point. A cow is more than just its carbon footprint. A cow is so much more. There's, as you said, guys, a circularity around it. There's people working behind it. When I hear, sometimes I hear people just talking like consumers as an example, not like, okay. Maybe as an example, I hear consumers talking about the carbon footprint. And as a dairy farmer with that complex system behind me, I feel kind of ignored or deceived just talking about this carbon footprint when behind that there's so much more which makes a farm sustainable. And this is the spirit of the dairy sustainability tool I'm working for. It is a science-based tool which measures or asks at dairy farms more than 86 criteria about not just climate-relevant parts, but also social sustainability, economic sustainability, ecologic sustainability, and animal welfare points, because all these points are relevant when talking about sustainability at dairy farms. And I know speaking about the carbon footprint is important when we want to reach our goals, but it's also important to see this whole picture. We talked about circularity, about people behind it, about like a whole system, which our whole society system is based on healthy farms and healthy people producing healthy food. And this is a greater thing we have to think about when talking about sustainability. And this is why I want to say that a cow is more than just its carbon footprint. It's the people behind it, it's the greater part, and also circularity, which is a great thing in it. Yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you. Really a lot of information, and for some of you in the audience, maybe a little bit overwhelming, but what we want to achieve today with our panel discussion and this event today is to inspire all the farmers all over Europe to start with a transformation or to keep on going if they are in the middle of the way. So let's talk about how to handle the challenges and what the benefits are for the farmers and from whom they can get support. Elisa, from a farmer's perspective, at least at the beginning, there's a lot of work to do to get on this sustainability road. But what are the benefits on the long term to inspire all the farmers they want to start?
Thank you for the question. I want to start with the thought of that many farms aren't founded yesterday. Many farms have like a family history for generations. And this living of a farm which is like given to generation, that is a sustainable thinking behind it. There is a sustainable thought behind it. So sustainability at itself is not a new thought for dairy farms or farms themselves, but it's a great thing to think of when we have the new challenges to talk about and how to implement new perspectives or to speak about new perspectives to deal with these challenges. So we have a climate crisis and we have other challenges, how to deal with them and to have your farm being healthy tomorrow and for the next generations. And the key question was?
How to, what are the benefits for the long term? Because if you want to start now and say, okay, it's a lot of work to do, but what are the benefits on the horizon?
Yeah, the benefits for the long term are in particular giving your farm to your, to the next generation or keeping the farm healthy. And in particular, the first steps are, as you said, John, taking the low-hanging fruits to what are the first steps we can deal with easily. And there are first steps which we can deal with easily. And this is the process. Like you start with the easy points and by thinking and walking and changing and growing you.
Okay. And John, let's talk about that first steps they have to go. So you said the basement for everything is to measure and to get the data. And what's next then? So what do you have to find out, or how you can find out where to start?
So for us, we all, we're a group of 7 farms who are the pilot in Northern Ireland. And really, we wanted to face our responsibility. And our responsibility is twofold. One is to concerned citizens, and one is to our family. We are all family farms. I'm a 5th generation family farm. The 6th and 7th are already on my farm at the moment. So that's a big responsibility too. The key thing for us is we wanted knowledge, more than anything else. To get knowledge, we actually did need to find out where were our emissions coming, but not only where were they coming from, but baselining them against our colleagues. Were we good? Were we bad? Where did we sit here? Because that allows you to prioritize which actions am I going to do. Also, too, we wanted to know where our carbon stocks were, because at the moment, every conversation I have, we want to go to net zero, and then they go straight to emissions, okay? Net zero is not just about emissions, it's about building carbon stocks. So I do a lot of public engagement, because I believe we in the industry are guilty of talking to ourselves. We don't go out and engage concerned citizens, and particularly young urban people, okay? Who are at the drive of converting away from animal-based foods, okay? So we want to reach out to them. And many of them come to me and say, how can you defend the livestock industry? Okay, that's what they say to me. And I said, well, hold on. I hear what you're saying, but can I answer, first of all, with a question? How much carbon do you have the responsibility of looking after every year? Don't know. And I said, well, actually, do you not think you should know if you take climate change seriously? Because on my farm, I manage 24,200 tonnes of carbon every year before I can produce a litre of milk for you to drink. I'm hoping in 5 years' time, I might have 26,000 tonnes. And so, really, if you don't have that knowledge, how do you know where to prioritize? Okay? There is a big push coming from both retailers and processors and from government to go straight to methane inhibitors. Methane inhibitors are expensive. So what we're trying to do is focus on the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
And when we focus on the low-hanging fruit, we have certainly seen a 20% plus improvement of our carbon intensity per unit of output, but we've also made more money. Now, that actually incentivizes people to change, okay? My comment back to retailers and to government, if you want us to go further and we use up all the low-hanging fruit, you actually need to recognize we can't do it off the fat of our financial back. Someone is going to have to pay.
Yeah.
And so at least we're putting knowledge in, we're empowering farmers to make the right decisions, but also empowering them to stand up within their own community. We have a lot of problems at the moment where farming families' children go to school. And we have great teachers, but they're all talking about sustainability. And they're all saying animals are bad, plants are good. And then they come back to the farm, and mummy, daddy, why do we have animals? And it's causing a real problem so at least now we can answer those criticisms. We can have open days, we can go into schools, and we can hold our head up high with integrity and say, yes, we do cause emissions, but look at all the carbon and the earthworms I'm driving here, and look at my journey. And by the way, we produce something that's really nutritious. 30 years ago, the milk sector went through real pain because everyone walked away from butter and cheese and went to margarines. Now, the latest science is showing that full-fat dairy products will reduce obesity and reduce rectal cancer. Now, who in the audience actually understood that?
Yeah.
So now the science has gone real. We produce a fantastic product that will absolutely drive this agenda to zero hunger and improve the health of our consumers.
Yeah.
And we don't shout enough about that.
Federico, you mentioned that circularity is a kind of a tool for sustainability regarding a farm. And what you mentioned about circularity sounds a little bit like going back to the roots. And Elisa mentioned that a cow is a circle by itself. So that is very interesting. What does a farmer has to ask himself or herself when they regard the topic of circularity? What is the first question to ask if you want to improve circularity on your farm?
Good question, and not an easy question, I would say. Let's say when you say circularity is a sort of a step back to the roots, I must admit you're right, and this is a discussion we always enter when we talk about mixed farming, because we always come to say that mixed farming is, for obvious reasons, very interesting and nice, but this, of course, would force the farmers to be less specialized, and sort of 50 years ago farming, that is not something we can, let's say, reasonably ask the farmer to be. Modern time require modern solutions, so we have to pay attention when we talk about circularity, and this is why I put the scale issue into play. Some farms are already rather circular. Some farms are less. Some have room for improvement, some not so much. These have to be seen on many dimensions, the environmental, the economic, and the social dimension. So it is complex. And this is why I truly believe that there is potential, for instance, on looking for circularity at a broader scale. Of course, not too broad, because that would be absurd. A pun I usually like to make is the Earth is circular, because everything stays. With the exception of few rockets going to the space, everything is circular. Of course, that is only a joke. We are talking about efficiency of use of resources and not polluting and using the resources efficiently. The question is, at what scale are we efficient? Farm scale or broader scale? And probably the answer is, depending on where you are and how the farms are, probably we are more efficient at a slightly higher scale, not the farm scale. I don't have the answer which is the right scale. This is a research question. Mm-hmm. It's probably not the country, it's probably not, we are in Germany, the state, the land. It's probably smaller, but I don't have the answer. So, going back to the farmer, in my opinion, the farmer should ask himself or herself how to be sustainable, not how to be circular.
So we can ask Elisa, so maybe you have an example for us for circularity on your farm beside the cows, where you have implemented it, for example, and how can it go?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Previous, I learned that I can start at a lower point, like how is circularity on a dairy farm lived?
Yeah.
You know, circularity in a dairy farm is not just we have the cow and we get the milk, something's in, something's out, done. We have, like, on one point, what do I feed a cow? I can feed her grass, and grasslands are not just like undigestible for us people, for us humans. It is also a great carbon, how do you say it? Sink. Thank you for that. It's also a great carbon sink. On the other hand, you can feed cows like byproducts from other production lines, like from beer production, this side waste, I don't know the English word.
Brewer's grade.
Brewer's grade. Thank you, John. So that's about the input. We can take some stuff from like other value chains or like grassland, which has a value for itself. And we can see what's about the manure. The manure is on one side a great nutrient for the soil, way better than synthetic nutrients. Is that the right word for that? Way better than synthetic nutrients. And on the other side, it's a common thing in Germany that you put the manure in kind of a solution where the gas is getting to electricity. So what's Biogasanlage called in English?
Yeah, biogas.
Yeah, you can make biogas with manure, out of the manure. And after, like, getting heat for consumer households and electricity, you can also use this manure as a nutrient for the soils. And this is lived practice on German dairy farms.
Yeah. So, John, you want to add something, but maybe you can answer the question of collaboration and networking between farmers and why that is so important regarding the landscape as well. Maybe you can talk about
Okay,
this.
well, can I just, on circularity.
For sure.
For me, the best bit of circularity.
Maybe you can push your microphone a little bit. Yeah.
That better?
Yeah, better.
Dear, I've never been said I'm not loud enough. So for me, the best and easiest thing about circularity in a dairy farm is feces. Feces is gold dust. It's full of bacterial and fungi. And certainly back at home, we have a lot of both NGOs and governments saying, get rid of animals, plant trees. On my farm, we've got animals and we've got trees. And what we did last year, we got a master's student from the Netherlands, from Wageningen University in Research, and we actually did an analysis of the soil biology under our grass, under our silver pasture, and under our trees. Guess which had by far the best soil biology in earthworms, in soil respiration, in bacterial and fungi communities. Anything that had big animal feces being defecated on it. And so circularity, biological circularity for me, is that role of taking the bacterial and fungi from a rumen of a cow, excreting it onto soil, it being broken down and driving the microbiome of the soil, driving productivity and back up into the cow. 60% of the world's biodiversity is in the soil. It's not a bee, it's not a butterfly, it's not a bird. It's in a soil. So when we talk about a biodiversity crisis, we have a very rose-tinted view about that, and that is it's everything in the sky. Actually, the sky doesn't exist if we don't get the soil right. And number one is cow feces and the bacterial and fungi within it. And so that, to me, is absolutely core, and that is not recognized by society. If you take big animals off, which my great-great-grandfather planted oak trees 250 years ago. But he made one mistake. He fenced the cows out of it. So when he fenced the cows out of it, there was no feces going back. Today, 200 years later, I have no earthworms. My bacterial and fungi community is awful. And this isn't conifers. This is oak trees, daddy of the tree crop, because we've not had big animals. In the issue of collaboration, we've had great success in Northern Ireland collaboration. And we've worked hard at it, and mainly because agri-food is so important to our 8% of gross domestic product in Northern Ireland is the agri-food industry. So if we lose it, we're stuffed. So we're very focused on finding solutions. And so in 2014, government said to 12 of us, go and write a strategy about how we deliver sustainable land management with food production, which we did. And the bones of it was, if you can't measure, you can't manage. And we need to measure every field, every tree, every hedge. And government said, you're bonkers. We asked for £45 million. They absolutely said, you have some brass neck and cheek. Okay, I didn't give up. We got a pilot, we got £2.5 million, 3 river catchments. 80% of the farmers volunteered. 2 years later, we put a team of social scientists in, and what we did is we empowered them with really good information about their own farm, and we recorded 80% behavioral change. As a consequence, we took that data back to government, and now we've got our £45 million. And in Northern Ireland, we are measuring every field, every tree, every hedge, and giving that back to farmers to give them knowledge to make them better farmers. Our future is through collaboration and knowledge, and allowing us to make better quality decisions. If we make better quality decisions, we make more profits, we reduce our environmental footprint, but most importantly, we deliver really wholesome food for our consumers.
Mm-hmm. So Elisa, you told me before our panel that you invested on your farm in machines, in technique, to get the milk from the cows. And what collaborations or kind of collaborations is imaginable if we look over to all these huge machines?
Yeah.
They cost very much.
Yeah.
So is there imaginable that you can collaborate with other farms and say, okay, let's buy this together and use this together, or isn't it?
Yeah, sure. This is sometimes it's common practice that farms get together and buy their machines like in a together.
Unity?
Because yeah, you're right. They are very expensive. They have like the choice, but the clue is that you can buy them together, and this is great, like to share and to share the money and like. But if you have strange weather conditions in summer and you have like one machine for 2 greater farms, this is going to be a challenge. Who gets
Because
the machine
everybody
first?
needs it at
Who's
one time.
the first one to use
Yeah.
the machine? So many farms still have their own important machines,
Yeah.
but some kind of machines are shared as well, yeah? And this is the challenge behind that. You can share very great, and this is a great opportunity to make the synergy effect. Is this a word?
Yeah.
But there is a challenge behind that, truly.
Yeah. Yeah. Federico, what is how much digitalization is in the topic of circularity? So, how much digitalization do you need to measure all that data and to improve the system?
I would say digitalization is definitely a topic. We need it. It's hard to say how much, but I can give some examples. For instance, one example could be software tools for carbon accounting, for, let's say, being aware at farm level of the baseline emissions under, let's say, a business as usual scenario, and tools to calculate how these impacts would be changed, reduced by means of different management choices. This is something that already exists, but with lots of rooms for improvement, and it's for instance, a topic for us. It's digitalization that everybody should be able to touch quite concretely, because we can go from very complicated software models for scientists to apps that a farmer could use in a smartphone. But there's not only that. There could be barn sensors. This is something a little bit still in the making, far from practice. But we think, for instance, that it is important to monitor barn emissions and to have a sort of a real-time monitoring of what's happening in the barn, so that the farmer can react and management can be improved in order not to pollute the air and not to affect the welfare of the animals and to deplete resources, because the ammonia in the air, in the end, it's nitrogen that could stay in the loop. These are only 2 examples that can come to my mind, but of course the information technology has a very relevant role in the story.
Yeah. So, John, there are a lot of measure systems on the market. How to decide which is the right one for my farm and where to invest?
So I'm looking in 2 different areas. One is around all of us, on our set, we've all gone through carbon calculators. I don't know if anyone has gone through a carbon calculator. They're really quite onerous to do. So one of my asks of digital developers is, first of all, they talk to each other, okay? And that we actually look to pre-populate the carbon calculators as much as possible. So livestock movement, for example, we should have that database pre-populating our calculator. In the nutrients on our farm, we should have that. Our veterinary medicine records, our fertilizer records, to have as much of that pre-populated, because it makes doing your carbon calculator so much easier. But it's also important to pick the right carbon calculator. In Northern Ireland, we could access 60 different carbon calculators, and they all give you a different answer. Okay?
That is a problem.
so really what we're trying to do 2 things. One is give guidance to people. So I've got 6 rules. If you're going to pick a carbon calculator, the first one, is it independent? I am not going to use a carbon calculator of a firm who wants to buy my carbon cheap. Not going to do that. The only reason I'm doing a carbon calculator is I want integrity, okay? The second one, is it accredited? There is actually an ISO standard. Thirdly, will it look at the totality of my business? Because most dairy farms will sell calves. They may also have some crops that they'll sell. And so you want to look at the totality of your business and then allocate it back to the milk or to the calves or to the grain, okay? But you also need to know that the science of measuring methane is moving on. So at the moment, do the calculators dual report? Do they use what they call global warming potential 100, which is the standard, and global warming potential star? So you want to dual report in expectation that the United Nations and IPCC are going to recognize that biogenic methane from dairy cows is different to fossil fuel methane, okay? And lastly, do they bring in carbon sequestration? Okay, and it's really important that as we run our farms, is we build our carbon stocks up. So we are trying to, and when you rank that, then suddenly you haven't got 60 calculators, you've got 2 calculators, okay? And we have 1 or 2 that are now very dominant that we're using. So when you go through it, it is an onerous process. And certainly all 7 of us in our EIP operational group, ARC Zero, we have found it onerous, I have to say, and we don't rush home to do it. Okay? And so we're now asking, can we get the, whatever they call the APIs, so that different databases can talk to our calculator? So when we go to the calculator, all our livestock movements are already loaded up. All our nutrients already loaded up. Okay? So it makes then our quality control of it so much easier. So the principle is, can we make the right thing the easy thing to do?
Yeah.
Carbon calculators are here to stay, so can we make them easy? At the moment, they're not, okay?
Yeah.
And that's part of the journey we are going on. But regardless, we have to do it with integrity. And we have paid, we didn't just pay a fee for the calculator, we actually paid for a consultant to hold our hand. Because a calculator is only good as the information you put into it. And if you put the wrong information, you get the wrong answer back out again. So we paid an external consultant to quality control the data going in, to make sure we put the right data in. And we're now repeating this every 2 years so we can measure our journey, and then it baselines us against our peers. So in certain things, my farm's really good, and certain things, my farm's not so good. So now I know where I need to focus on.
Yeah.
And that really helps.
Yeah. So Elisa, which support all the farmers all over Europe need, and from whom, to get on track to the 1.5 target and all the other important SDGs?
Yeah, thank you. Gotta try to answer that question. So you were like, you have 16 different...
60. 60.
60. Okay, we have 20. That's a little bit better. I think the best words are knowledge, as John said, and as you... what's this
Convergence.
Convergence, like crossing points. Like I see in the practical part of my view that 2 farmers fill out their carbon module or stuff and get 2 different values, and then they talk. I have 1.5, I have 6.8. The questions differ. The whiteness of the questions differ. The numbers behind the questions differ, and this is not the right way to get the goal in the end. We have to have the same basis. As you said, the norm or the ISO behind it has to be the same for all, and in best cases for the whole world. We have to have the same basis, the same amount of questions would be nice, because forms which get questionnaires with 100 questions or stuff, I know that you need, the more questions you have, the more detailed the outcome is. But farmers
Sometimes
say,
it's very complex.
100 questions, I do that tomorrow. Or I write something in, I don't know. Knowledge what was the word you used?
Convergence.
Convergence is important.
Yeah.
I mean, can I just
Yeah,
come in?
you can add on.
Please.
My concern, having done this, is we have a Wild West out there. We have a lot of startup companies looking to do this, looking to do that, looking to that. We have very little leadership. And we've got no leadership in governance. I used to be an energy regulator, and I put the power stations in Northern Ireland into the emissions trading scheme 25 years ago. And before the European Commission stepped in to create one emissions trading scheme, we had a Wild West. And it's really interesting, 6 weeks ago, the European Parliament voted to create one single certification framework for carbon removals from the land-based sector. And that is the first start of putting some political leadership and governance around this. It's even more complicated because processors are now obliged by retailers to declare what they call Scope 3 emission declarations, okay? At the same time, governments are obliged to declare every year your greenhouse gas national inventory. So you've got, on one hand, the private sector wanting this, you've got the government asking this. Now, it's all about climate smart farming, but they're asking two totally different sets of questions, and they are completely confusing farmers. So a lot of the work I do is government advocacy, and it's about saying, actually, can we have the private sector and government talking to each other? So we have one single framework. So when I put my data in, it goes to both masters, Scope 3, and it goes to the greenhouse gas inventory. That doesn't happen at the moment, and it's causing real confusion. And so we need to crack this, because I go back to what I said. We need to make climate smart farming, which is the right thing, the easy thing. It's not at the moment. It's very confused. And you've got private sector fighting against public sector to be more green than each other. They're all top down, and no one has asked us to as farmers.
Yeah.
Okay? And we could come up with some of the best innovations happen on farm. We're very entrepreneurial. We're very innovative. Give us the idea. We'll knock the edges off it. We'll rub the corners off it, and we'll find the right solution. And certainly one single framework that we know what we're answering to. We know how we're going to be measured. We know what the rules are. You know, something the dairy sector will deliver.
Yeah. So knowledge is everything. You said that, Elisa. Yeah. So for a final round, I have a question for you, Federico. How can the scientists all over Europe work together and collaborate, and how to spread all the results of the researches you did, how we can spread that all over Europe, or you as a scientist? Because it's always difficult to explain science and to communicate it.
Yeah, it actually is. And also the communication at scientific level has, let's say, lots of barriers. We speak the same language, but scientists have to deal with, of course, their own national funding schemes, European schemes, and the work for their surroundings, but also work more globally and interconnected. So there are several challenges, but for instance, some of these challenges, I think, are clear and are already, let's say, in the way to be tackled. They mentioned convergence and the need of clarity. I can very clearly see this. And for instance, in a project in which we are involved in building a network of demo farms. And one of the aims is exactly trying to reach a consensus on the tool to use, harmonizing tools. There's a lot of work to do on this, because everybody can see that at the moment there's great confusion on that. For the rest, I'm not so experienced to be in the position of giving great recommendations, but I can say that we should not be afraid of communicating what we are doing in the most clear and simple way, a straightforward way possible. And the easiest thing for a scientist is to stay doing his work the way he knows, but we need to make the effort of communicating. Otherwise, it's more difficult, it's more challenging, but it's absolutely
necessary.
Needed. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for refilling the water here at this point. So, Elisa, farmers all over Europe tell us again and again that they don't feel valued, and I think we all can understand that. But today we heard so much about all the efforts and how to communicate that you are on the way in the middle of this transformation, and that the audience and all the people around us will say, oh, that's really great what they are doing, and we have to support them. How to communicate this?
I think this is got to take some time, and it's the longer process to transfer this knowledge and our process in every brain. But it's the best way to do something like this here, isn't it? Like this, or like the whole fair, like the organizations in every country to tell the story of dairy and the story of agriculture and what we're doing currently. Because this is an ongoing process, it takes time, and I think we're on the right path to do so.
Yeah. So, John, yesterday in the evening, we talked about that's not only to meet the 1.5 target, we have to combine all the SDGs. Can you see a way how that can be? How to make this?
So we have two issues we have to tackle, both in science and innovation and in policy and regulation. We do it in silos. There are no more silver bullets out there. Our journey will have to be a systemed solution. And we need to have scientists and researchers looking at systems-based thinking. But we also need policy and regulation to be looking at systems as well. For example, on many dairy farms, they produce greenhouse gas emissions. So in the Greenhouse Gas National Inventory, that's under agriculture, forestry, and land management. They sequester carbon. That's under land use change, and forestry. They use renewables, so that's under the energy. They do waste management, that's under waste. So they don't get an overall, they're not allowed to inset. So there's no mechanism at the moment, and I presented to the United Nations back in August time, and I called this out. At the moment, their reporting mechanism, which I believe is the tail, is wagging us farmers as the dog. And the way forward is actually we need to take control of our own destiny. Yes, we have to change, but they need to create measurement and reporting mechanisms against something that is sensible, okay? I, on my farm, deliver multiple public goods, and I'm proud to do it, of which producing really wholesome food is fundamental. But I also drive biodiversity. I drive water quality. I cause employment. You know, I do all of those things. And the moment we haven't a way of recognizing that. So that is something that governments are going to have to recognize. And it's really important to the science community out there. When I talk, intensely to them, they'll say the answer for dairy production is we're going to give you a methane inhibitor. That is a silver bullet that delivers one problem. Doesn't tackle ammonia, doesn't tackle biodiversity, doesn't tackle water quality. I showed you up there one change. It was about replacing nitrogen fertilizer with multi-species swards. I delivered 5 public goods. And our system is not designed for system solutions. There's a really bright future out there. We are part of a biological solution. For me, the light really came bright at the end of COP this year, at the end of last year, when I saw that FAO report, Zero Hunger on 1.5 degrees, really putting the focus of animal source foods of driving zero hunger. We are not a sunset industry.
Yeah.
We have a role to play to get society to 2050. We are the solution. We're not the problem.
Thank you so much, and let's close with one sentence you said in the meetings before. So it's very good to use all the knowledge we have from our grandfathers and grandmothers, but today we have the science to underline that and to prove that, and that is really a great situation to go on to all the goals we have to reach. Thank you very much, and big applause again for you three. It was such an inspiring panel, I guess. And now we will have a little break. We have some snacks and beverages over there for all the invited guests. And at 3:30, they will start an English-speaking tour throughout the event farm hall. And maybe you want to join it and you are interested in. Thanks for your attentions, and have a nice day and a great rest of the day. Bye-bye.